Okay, now let me just show you a few things with the violin on. So when you're fitting your shoulder rest and you're trying to adjust it to your specifications, you want to make sure that everything stays neutral when you put the violin up. You don't want to have to raise your shoulder. You don't want to have to change your neck in any way, shape, or form. Look in a mirror when you're doing this. This has me really in a neutral position. I love it. And you want to make sure that the violin isn't artificially jacked up high so that every time you move your head, see, mine's just about perfect, so I can't make it do it. But if it were elevated, here, I'll make it elevated extra high. When your head moves, if your scroll bobs around like crazy, like that, your shoulder rest is way too tall. You want your head movement to have really no impact on the scroll movement of your violin, so watch for that. If the shoulder rest doesn't feel like it's seating properly, like right now, this is digging into my chest, and I can see why. Because it comes out and it ends abruptly in a straight line. So I would probably, in fact I would take some pliers and make that kind of smooth out a little. Oop. Wrong side. I'm gonna just round this out a little bit at the end, like so. Now, if you don't want to damage your shoulder rest, put cloth in the jaws of your pliers so that you don't do ugly scratches. Now let's see what that did. Now my shoulder rest goes on really easily. I don't have to pry it open to get it on my violin because I widened the brackets to fit my violin. Okay, so now that's a lot more comfortable. It's no longer really digging, but you know what? It's elevating my tilt too much. I feel locked. And so for me, I am going to remember how I demonstrated figure eighting this, how I showed you you can bend these ends, not just back and forth, but side to side. I don't like mine bent side to side. I liked it level. So I'm going to minimize that curve. It was out like that. I just flattened it a little bit. I brought these corners in with my pliers a little bit, and I just made it straight on so that it's not figure eight twisted. And you just search like a dentist. Search for the high spots. Search for the aggravations. Ooh, that's getting there. That's very nice. Now watch what happens back here. When I put this up, it slips away from me a little bit. Now that's clothing. My clothing is slipping off my shoulder. So when you're trying to fit a shoulder rest, pull your clothing taut so that your clothing doesn't throw you off. And then if there's still slippage, then you know it's a problem of the shoulder rest and not loose fitting clothing. That's important. A lot of students get thrown off by the fact that their clothing will be gathered up on their shoulder, and then they put their shoulder rest up and then everything slips. And so then they're mangling their shoulder rest for something that could have been fixed like that. Okay, so watch out for your clothing. I think the rest is going to be trial and error on your part. I've showed you the standard adjustments. I've showed you 2 ways to customize your shoulder rest by shortening the screw on the shoulder side so that you can minimize this hook and so that you can minimize the height that it's raising your violin on your shoulder. It's 2 good reasons that a short person would want to shorten that screw right there. Okay, I want to encourage you to experiment with how flat you can make that hook. You'll discover that you can get by if it's properly adjusted and if it's seating with full contact, not seating on the side or on an angle. If you can get it to make full contact with your shoulder, you'll discover that you can get by with much less of a hook, and it'll give you more freedom. And then, of course, I showed you the extreme way of adjusting it by adding an extra hole on this side right here so that you can make that hook go up on your shoulder even further. And I want to show you what that looks like when the shoulder rest is actually up on my shoulder. Now, I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not in love with this particular adjustment for my own personal fitting. Then I have to flatten it out even more. And as you can see, I'm struggling to get the shoulder rest to seat properly on my shoulder, and I'm touching the spot that bothers me. This is a good thing to do. Put your hand on the spot that bothers you so you can find it when you take it off your shoulder. I'm trying to swivel it here and change the swivel, but that did not fix the problem. And so see that how that edge is not sitting on my shoulder. The edge that's closest to you, it's right there. It's raised. It's not seating properly. So I'm going to figure 8 twist it. And usually that means you have to take it off the violin so you can use both hands and not rip it off your instrument. Then it throws it much further back on my shoulder. Now, when I put it up at first, I found that this side was not touching my shoulder. There was air under this side of the shoulder rest. And so I did a little figure 8 twist to help it to seat completely on my shoulder. Now, I'm finding that I don't truly need this. I liked it better the first way. The reason I mentioned this weird adjustment is because I've had 2 students who really it was the only way that they could get good security, and I was checking their posture and their violin positioning and their clothing, and everything else was right, but they just couldn't get it to sit on their shoulder. And so we moved that little shoulder piece up higher, and then it worked like a charm. I'm trying to get this shoulder rest back to where I liked it, and it's reminding me of a couple really common complaints when people are trying to fit the Bon Musica to them. The 2 complaints is a corner that digs in on their chest, and the feeling that even though this hook is on their shoulder, the feeling that it's gonna fall. So there's a couple of easy, hopefully, ways to tweak that. The easiest is this one down here. If you feel something digging into your chest, put your finger on it, because it's too hard to lift it away and then know which side was digging you. So I see you, you corner that's digging into me. It's that one right there is poking me. So I'm going to take my pliers. Which one did I say it was? See, it's easy to forget. And I'm going to bend that down and away from me. All better. I just bent, you see that little tiny little bend right on the tip. That's just enough to get rid of that little corner that was digging. Now, this feels like it's right on my shoulder ball, and I want it to be up higher. So without going to the extreme adjustment, I'm going to move the shoulder rest physically that way. That brings the shoulder rest up onto my shoulder more. It completely moved it, let me show you. Completely moved it from being out here, right on the ball of my shoulder, where it feels like it's gonna fall. And I just slid the feet up a little bit more. Okay, now every time you make one adjustment, it usually messes something else up. So what that just did is it just made the shoulder rest feel higher for me. So you have to find ways of mitigating each time that you make an adjustment. The other thing that can help this insecure feeling out here without resorting to the extreme hook is to do a figure 8 twist. Because look, if I could show you, it's really hard to show you, but this side of the shoulder rest is not truly seating on my shoulder. This side is seating more. So what's the simplest way to adjust that? So to help your shoulder rest seat properly, you've got two choices. You can use the swivel function that I showed you, where the feet actually swivel, or you can twist the shape of the shoulder rest. Try one, try the other, until you get that shoulder rest to lay flat, perfectly seated on your shoulder. And that will give you a greater feeling of security. Okay, whenever you're doing the swivel function, be careful, because that can swivel that metal part right into the back of your violin. Where you had clearance before, if you do the swivel, it can change that clearance. So just always be mindful of that. I'm going to go ahead and put some black gaffing tape on that metal part, just in case it comes in contact with the back of my violin. So at least I have that little security blanket. Okay, so I've got it set exactly where I like it. The hook is seated firmly on my shoulder. It's coming into contact fully, not on a side or a portion of the shoulder rest. The violin is resting on my collarbone. It's right there on my bone, and it sits there. So when I move my head, my scroll isn't getting teeter-tottered all over the place. The chest portion has the tilt of my violin right where I want it. The curve is not so severe that I can't move my violin around when I need to. And I do need to a lot, just for various reasons that I won't go into now. But so I've got this right where I want it, where I have the freedom I need, but the security that I want. So I hope that something I said in this video today gave you an aha moment. I know it was a little bit long and rambling because there's so many thoughts and possibilities with this shoulder rest. But thank you for watching. I hope it was helpful to you. Good luck on your quest for perfect violin comfort, and I'll see you in the next video.